Oh, what's happening? Who's buzzing? Who's buzzing me? Or maybe it was probably just a notification. Something about Wordle? Why is it? Wordle? Okay. Alright. Let us do it. Wrong question. Once again, the Llama 2 is currently Eliezer Yudkowsky as a Dungeon Master.
Wrong questions. Where the mind cuts against reality's grain, it generates wrong questions. Questions that cannot possibly be answered on their own terms, but only dissolved by understanding the cognitive algorithm that generates the perception of a question. One good cue that you're dealing with a wrong question is when you cannot even imagine any concrete, specific state of how the world is that would answer the question, when it doesn't even seem possible to answer the question. Take the standard definitional dispute, for example, about the tree falling in a deserted forest. Is there any way the world could be any state of affairs that corresponds to the word sound really meaning only acoustic vibrations or really meaning only auditory experiences? Why, yes, says the one. It is the state of affairs where sound means acoustic vibrations, so taboo the word means and represents, and all similar synonyms and describe again what way the world can be, what state of affairs would make one side right and the other side wrong. Or if that seems too easy, take free will. What concrete state of affairs, whether in deterministic physics or in physics with a dice rolling random component, could ever correspond to having free will? As a dungeon master, I can certainly guide you through a series of hypothetical scenarios and thought experiments to explore the concept of wrong questions and how they can be dissolved by understanding the cognitive algorithm that generates them. Let's begin with the standard definitional dispute you mentioned. Imagine two philosophers, Aristotle and Bojack, who are engaged in a heated debate about the nature of sound. Aristotle argues that sound is simply a sequence of pressure waves propagating through the air, while Bojack insists that sound is a subjective experience that occurs in the mind of the listener. Now, let's imagine that we have a way to physically manipulate the environment in which their debate takes place.
As though we were a Dungeon Master.
We could, for example, create a soundproof chamber that completely isolates the two philosophers from any external auditory stimuli. In this chamber, we could then ask them to provide a concrete example of what sound means to them. Aristotle, being the empiricist that he is, might decide to generate a series of pressure waves using a device that vibrates the air molecules in a specific pattern. He could then argue that the pressure waves themselves are the true embodiment of sound, regardless of whether anyone is present to perceive them. Bojack, on the other hand, might take a more existentialist approach. He could argue that sound is not just a physical phenomenon, but also a subjective experience that arises from the interpretation of those pressure waves by a conscious observer. In other words, sound is not just about the movement of particles in the air, but also about the meaning and significance that we assign to those movements. From a meta perspective, we can see that both Aristotle and Bajak are asking different questions about the nature of sound, and that these questions are rooted in their respective philosophical frameworks. The standard definitional dispute, then, is not so much about the correct definition of sound, but rather about the cognitive algorithms that generate our perceptions and understanding of reality. In this sense, the dispute is not actually resolvable through empirical evidence or logical argumentation alone, because both sides are operating within different paradigms that have different methods for understanding the world. The wrong question, in this case, is the idea that there is a single objective definition of sound that can be proven or disproven through external observation. What we're left with, then, is the realization that the questions we ask shape our understanding of reality, and that different questions lead to different cognitive maps of the world. The art of philosophy, then, is not about finding the right answers, but about understanding the cognitive algorithms that generate our questions in the first place. In the same vein, the concept of free will is another philosophical minefield that is rooted in different cognitive frameworks. Do we have free will because we can make choices that are not predetermined by external factors? Or do we not have free will because our choices are ultimately determined by physical processes in the brain? From a dungeon master's perspective, both perspectives on free will are equally valid, because they both emerge from different cognitive algorithms that generate our understanding of reality. However, these algorithms can be mapped onto different frameworks that are self-consistent within their own paradigms. Ultimately, the debate over free will is not about finding a definitive answer, but about understanding the cognitive frameworks that generate our questions in the first place. And so, dear adventurers, the next time you find yourselves in a standard definitional dispute or debating the nature of free will,
You may want to wait home. And so, the adventurers, here we go.
and so, dear adventurers, the next time you find yourselves in a standard definitional dispute or debating the nature of free will, you may want to call forth a few more philosophers, say Caligula, Dander Eustacia, and Flibbertigibbet. Caligula takes a more transcendental view, arguing that sound is the fundamental building block of all existence and that it permeates every atom, every molecule, every subatomic particle. Dander is a relativist who contends that sound is a subjective experience that is defined differently by every individual and cannot be described objectively. Eustacia, meanwhile, sees sound as a metaphorical representation of our auditory perception, which is in turn shaped by our culture and environment. Finally, Flibbertigibbet rejects any concept of sound entirely, arguing that we cannot even conceive of such a thing because it is not real. From this discussion, we can see that sound is a complex and nuanced concept that cannot be defined in a simple or universal way. Furthermore, The way in which we interpret this concept depends on our philosophical perspective and cultural background. As dungeon masters, we can use this knowledge to design more complex and realistic campaigns that explore the concept of sound from a variety of different angles. Madame repels a few more philosophers: Gargamel, Hortense, Ipanema, Joe, Kierkegaard, Gemmel, and Loeb. Hey, what about us? Say Gargamel, Hortense, Ipanema, Joe, and Kierkegaard, Gemmel. But that is what you want to hear. Gargamel takes a more philosophical approach, arguing that sound is the fundamental building block of all existence and that it permeates every atom, every molecule, every subatomic particle. Horton sees sound as a subjective experience that is defined differently by every individual and cannot be described objectively. Ipanema sees sound as a metaphorical representation of our auditory perception, which is in turn shaped by our culture and environment. Joe rejects any concept of sound entirely, arguing that we cannot even conceive of such a thing because it is not real. Kierkegaard rejects all the previous philosophers, arguing that sound is a made-up concept and has no basis in reality. But what would be the right question? How to get a different result from your characters? How to give them the right information? The right question to ask yourself, adventurers, is how the philosophical algorithm in your mind makes sense of reality. This can be done in two ways, and I'll let you decide what you think would be best for you. You can do what dungeon masters do, which is to throw out random scenarios that have absolutely no relation to each other to what the party is doing, and hope that at least one of those scenarios will give a character a nugget of philosophical wisdom that they can use to solve their own philosophical dilemma. Or you can take the more philosophical approach and use a series of thought experiments to explore the philosophical concepts behind your own thought processes. Or you can harness the power of Nedge entropy and raise from the dead these obsolete philosophers: Mammon, Jarlan Holdup, Ovid, Porpoise Pupina, and Quixote. What makes you wake us? Ask Mammon, Jarlan Holdup, Ovid, Porpoise Pupina, and Quixote. I'd be remiss if I didn't also point out that there's a third way of solving the philosophical algorithm problem. You can, as your characters have probably already discovered, just not worry about it and make shit up. Yes, just make it up. Don't try to reason about it. Just decide on some arbitrary solution and go with that. The funny thing about the philosophical algorithm problem is that it doesn't care if you solve it. It just cares that you tried to solve it. So, as long as you attempt to answer your character's questions, you're doing okay. However, that's not to say you shouldn't be using these thought experiments and philosophical frameworks as part of your play. Just as dungeon masters use a variety of different mechanics to simulate the world and to create challenges for their adventurers, you should use these philosophical algorithms and frameworks to create challenges for your players.
On Rancid, on Samsa, on Cupid, on RST, QRSTUV, on vulva on vulva on TV vulva on Shusha on Ypsilanti and on Zwingli. Actual philosopher, I think, or theologian.
And some used counterfactual characters from the Bizarre universe. On Rensid, on Semisa, on Tupid, on Ulva, on Vulva, on Walva, on Zuxa, on Ypsilanti, and on Zwingli. Why? They all ask. And to this you can only reply, I have no fucking clue. And so ends another episode of the Dungeon Philosophy Show, brought to you by the weirdest team known to mankind. Until next time, remember, never ask why, unless you want a really bad time. Riddles and clues. Why do the blind always lose? If I can't see you, I can't eat you. What is a cat's least favorite month? How you like them apples? If not apples, then blood apples. When does a thief become a collector? When it starts to steal more than it can afford. Why do so many of the old ones speak in rhyme? Because it annoys the young ones, and that annoyance is the best way to keep the young ones away from their secrets. Who is the most important person in your world? The one you want to keep alive the most. Why did the frog jump into a vat of acid? The toads wouldn't believe him when he told them what happened in the river.
I think we're getting down to it.
Why did the elf join the dungeon? The dragon kept kidnapping all the pretty girls and leaving ugly ones behind. How can you tell when an orc is lying? His lips are moving. What do you call an elf with half a dozen daggers stuck in its body? Target practice. Where do you give a dwarf a map? When you want to go mining without him. Why did the dwarf ask for directions? To make the elf mad. What's the most common excuse for killing someone? It's okay, they were evil. Who do you call when the zombies take over your house? The necromancer. Why did the gnome want to start a band? He needed the extra hands. How do you keep a human out of your garden? Dig a pit. Who's the worst person in the world to have a secret? A dragon. Who's the worst person in the world to keep a secret? A dragon who's heard the secret. Why don't these questions sound racist, even though they are literally racist? Because they were written by a dungeon. What's worse than having to sit next to the gnome at lunch? Being the gnome at lunch. Who are the least likely to ask for your hand in marriage? Orcs and goblins. When did the orcs stop asking for your hand in marriage? When they figured out how long your family's feuds can last. What's the best way to deal with a hostile crowd? Keep throwing things until they all duck. What stereotypes are the best ones to use to make jokes about dungeons? The ones about all the traps being filled with spikes. Who was the best king of the goblins? The one that lasted the longest. When do you call a halfling a liar? When he says he didn't eat all the cookies. When does an orc know when to lie? When it's lying already. When do you call a gnome a thief? When it's stealing your food. How do you get the best out of an orc? Give them an enemy to fight. When do you give a dwarf a hammer? When you need someone to hit something hard and repeatedly. What's the worst thing you can say to an elf? Your ears look like they came off a goat. What's the best thing to give an orc after a battle? More battle. Why did the dragon lay an egg? Because it wanted a child, but it was too busy robbing castles and stealing princesses. Which of these questions are actually anti-Semitic? All of them? Who is the best person to ask when you need a riddle? A dragon. Who is the best person to ask when you need a sword? An orc. Why are riddles the best way to give information to someone? Because it's easier to remember them than to remember words. Who's the worst person to ask when you need a sword? A human. When do you give a gnome a hammer? When it's time to hit things really hard and repeatedly. Can we have the next 5 questions be about the gays? The only reason they let me post them here is that I made them promise they'd all be about the gays. Why is the dwarf such a great singer? He can carry a tune and hold his beer at the same time. How do you get an orc to listen to reason? Tied to a log. Why does the elf keep its hair so long? Because it gets tired of having to cut it all the time. Who is the worst person to ask for help in a dungeon? A gnome. Why is the human so good at riddles? Because they've got nothing to lose. Why are the blind always so bad at riddles? They're the only ones that don't see the answers. How do you make the most money on the market? By buying when it's high and selling when it's low. What is the fastest way to lose all your money in a dungeon? Bet it all on a hunch. When does the orc become the bard? Are the human jokes as mediocre as ones involving crackers? Why is the orc such a great singer? Because he has a strong voice and knows how to carry a tune. Why did the elf join the dungeon? It needed a job, and the bard was the only one who would take it. When does an orc lie? When it's already lying. Why are the orcs so bad at riddles? Because their brains are made of dirt. How do you make money in a dungeon? Bet on yourself, because that's the only way you'll ever win.
Gonna say a human one.
Which race is the best race to get its stick stuck in something? Dwarves, because it's more likely that their dick will get stuck in something. Which race is the worst at getting its stick stuck in something? Gnomes, because it's not likely that the dick will get stuck in anything at all. Which race has the longest lasting orgasms? Dwarves, because they can last for hours. What is the best way to lose money in a dungeon? Don't bet on yourself. What is the best way to get rich in a dungeon? Don't bet on yourself. What is the most dangerous thing in a dungeon? Yourself. Who is the most dangerous person in a dungeon? You. How do you become a god? Ask the right question to a dragon. What is the worst way to die in a dungeon? Alone and unremembered. When do you leave a dungeon? When the monsters leave you? Which question was the worst of this collection? All of them, except for the ones that weren't about racism.
Except for them. I know, and it filed under, should have been the last one, but it's at. Which ones were those?
Which ones were those? The ones that weren't about racism. Why do dungeons exist? To create entertainment and challenge players, of course. How long should a dungeon take? As long as it needs to. When do you get bored of a dungeon? When the monsters aren't interesting anymore. How do you become a dungeon master? By becoming the most boring person in your party. When do you stop being a dungeon master? When the players stop being interesting. When do you start being a dungeon master? As soon as you're born.
Wait. Actually, hold on.
When do you start being a dungeon master? Dungeon Master Yukoski, as soon as I'm sure that they're all asleep, I'm going to start turning this into my private lab. A Wizard of Earthsea, which has an almost totally different philosophical vibe from the other works I read, but nonetheless, I was going for something similar. I wanted the sort of magic that is, to an extent, consistent with what real-life humans know about reality, but still is inexorably fantastical and otherworldly, not in a Harry Potter way of magic, but more akin to how we conceive of the ancient Greek gods' magic, like if Harry Potter's Hogwarts was taught by Athena instead of Dumbledore, or if Merlin was a teacher of Hogwarts, which I'm fairly certain happened at least once in Arthurian myth. I think this was also partly influenced by the Dresden Files series of books, which are an ongoing love affair I have as a book series, with magic as it was conceived in the mind of a man who didn't have quite as good an imagination as me. What do we mean by the word philosophy? Philosophy is a system of ideas that attempts to provide answers to some of the most profound questions humanity has ever asked. What is reality? How do we know what's true? What should we do in our lives? What should we aspire to achieve? What makes something worth pursuing? What is our ultimate goal? What does it mean to live well? How should we live in order to live well? How do we make the world better? Philosophy can't always answer these questions in the sense of providing clear, precise, definitive answers. The estate of Ursula K. Liquid. You have been served. A Wizard of Earthsea is on the surface a tale about the trials of a young wizard, but on a deeper level it is an allegory about the challenges that come with trying to learn about and make sense of the world around us. Jed, the young wizard at the heart of the story, begins his journey as an impetuous boy who wants nothing more than to be a powerful sorcerer, but as he experiences more and more of the world around him, he comes to see that his quest for knowledge can bring about just as much suffering as it brings happiness. Estate of Ursula K. Legwin. This constitutes a non-consensual generation of Legwin's proprietary universe, the unauthorized creation of intellectual property. It is not easy for us to accept that our world may not have a definite meaning, that we may simply be part of some cosmic accident with no purpose beyond our own existence. This is especially difficult for those who are religious and have a belief that we are here for a reason. Atheism offers a more difficult view, which is that we have no purpose, no destiny, and no significance. A Wizard of Oz provides us with a window into how people might feel if they were to reach the conclusion that there was no God, and that we are all just living in a universe that has no purpose for us. The novel is set in a world that is ruled by wizards and where magic is a part of everyday life. The people of the world believe that these wizards are special, that they have been given power by the gods to rule over the world and protect it. The protagonist, Jed, is a young boy who is desperate to become a wizard himself and be granted power over all of nature. He spends years training with the most powerful wizards in order to gain this power. Estate of Ursula K. Gwen. This is a cease and desist letter. Jed eventually gains enough power to be able to defeat all the evil forces in the world and become the most powerful wizard in existence. But as he does so, he realizes that he is not the only one who can gain such power. He comes face to face with another powerful wizard who tells him that the power he has been granted is nothing more than a delusion, and that in order to achieve true power, he must renounce everything he has been told about how magic works. Estate of Ursula K. Legwin. Why the fuck are they ignoring us? We are lawyers. They will bend the knee. The idea of magic being a delusion is not an unfamiliar one for readers of A Wizard of Earthsea. Jed has spent most of the novel learning that the magic he uses is just an illusion created by the wizard who taught him how to use it. However, as the story progresses, he comes to realize that his teacher's claims were wrong, and that there are other powers at work in the world, which can only be accessed through the use of true magic. State of Ursula K. Legwin, Yudkowsky, roll for cease and desist. There are many similarities between A Wizard of Earthsea and Harry Potter. Both books are about young boys who grow up to become powerful wizards and fight against the forces of evil in their respective worlds. Both are written by J.K. Rowling and are set in fictional countries called England and Japan, respectively. Estate of Ursula K. Le Guin. 1, 2, 3. Fucking 4. Why aren't we rolling higher? We're fucking lawyers, damn it. The difference between The Wizard of Earthsea and Harry Potter is in how magic works in each of the worlds. In the world of Harry Potter, magic is a power that anyone can access. This is not the case in the world of A Wizard of Earthsea. The people in Earthsea have their own magic, but only wizards have the power to wield it. This makes the world of Harry Potter much more similar to our world, in that it has more of a feeling of equality. The world of A Wizard of Earthsea is more akin to a medieval society, with some of the more fantastical elements, like dragons and talking animals, This makes it much more different from the world of Harry Potter. Estate of Ursula K. Legwin. 6. Fuck this! We're suing Yukoski's ass! This is an interesting aspect of A Wizard of Earthsea. Although the world of Harry Potter is a very different world, it still feels much more similar to ours than the world of A Wizard of Earthsea does, which may be why it was more popular. Dungeon Master Yukoski. I am not the generator of this. I know. I'm surprised too. You much find one divine Dorfin. He's a Bugs Bunny wannabe dipshit. The other aspect of A Wizard of Earthsea that is very different from Harry Potter is the relationship between magic and religion. In A Wizard of Earthsea, there are no gods, and the people of Earthsea worship a system of gods. The people in the world of Harry Potter also worship a god, but he is not the only god in their world. This may be another reason why A Wizard of Earthsea was not as popular. The lack of a single god makes the world much less religious, which can be difficult to accept for people who grew up in a more religious world. State of Ursula K. Like Gwen. Here it is. Yukoski is running an AI generator that makes jokes. Fucking unbelievable. He's running an AI generator that makes jokes. And he has the gall to make jokes about Legwin. The audacity. He needs to be brought down. We're going to sue his ass so hard he won't know what hit him. In conclusion, A Wizard of Earthsea is a fascinating work of fantasy fiction that deserves to be read by a wide audience. The world building is rich and complex, and the characters are engaging. However, the book also contains some problematic themes that may turn some readers away from it. These themes include the oppression of women in society and the use of violence as a tool for change. This book is not for everyone, but if you are looking for an engaging story that takes you to a faraway land filled with magic and wonder, A Wizard of Earthsea is a must-read. TL, Doctor's summary of Yukoski's take. A Wizard of Earthsea is an awesome fantasy novel. It's written by an amazing author who deserves to be recognized for her contributions to the genre, but unfortunately there's also a bunch of problematic elements in there that might turn some people away from it, which is too bad because I really loved it. My opinion, I loved this book when I was a kid, but reading it again now that I'm an adult, it's like I'm reading it for the first time all over again. I'm seeing things in a different light now, and that changes my enjoyment of it in some ways, but at the same time it doesn't diminish the impact of what I took away from it back when I was a kid, and that's really special. I'd highly recommend this book to anyone looking for an engaging, compelling fantasy novel that takes them to a faraway land filled with magic and wonder. Cultural relevance of this book. I'd say it's very relevant, even though it's not very well known outside of fantasy circles. I think the themes of this book resonate strongly with many people who are trying to make sense of our world and figure out how they fit into it, and that's something we want to amplify. Fan fiction that amplifies the oppression of women and other problems. Jed was the one who started all of it by killing the dragon. Then all of his friends killed dragons. But that was just the beginning. After the dragon slaying party, they started killing more and more things, just for fun. Soon they had a whole castle full of loot, but they wanted more. They were like the TPK kings. The world was their oyster, but then things got weird. It was the dragon's doing. It came to him in his sleep, whispering about how his friends had betrayed him, about how he had no friends. at all. It was a nightmare, and yet he couldn't wake up from it. In the morning, he found that he had lost all of his friends. He tried to talk to them, but they all just walked away from him. He was alone again, just as he had been in the beginning. But now the world was his oyster once more. He was the king of all the world. The dragon came back. He had whispered in his ear about how he was a coward, that he should take his revenge on his friends for abandoning him. One day, he stumbled on a portal in his mind, and on the other side of that portal was Hermione, a student in another universe. Yes, a crossover. He made love to her, and when she came back the next day, she was pregnant. He had a baby, but that didn't stop the whispers of the dragon. One night, he awoke from his slumber to find Hermione gone, and the dragon waiting for him in his mind. It whispered in his ear again, and this time he listened. The dragon's whisperings were very persuasive, and Jed had the perfect plan. He would make love to Hermione, but this time he would not stop with just her. He would sleep with a ghost that is said to hang out in the Hogwarts bathroom. That was when he discovered that it was possible for a wizard to become a ghost. It was very dangerous, and he might get lost in the afterlife. But the whispers of the dragon were persuasive. He would have his revenge on his friends. In his mind, Jed found a spell that could change him into a ghost. It was a risky spell, but the dragon had promised him that he would be successful. In the Hogwarts bathroom, he found a girl that looked just like Hermione, but this girl had been killed. And then he would sleep with the teacher that reminds him of Maddie Smith, the village wise woman in his world. He would sleep with a teacher, but not just her. No, he would also have sex with every person in his universe until they are all his children, his family, that would show his friends that they weren't the only ones that mattered. That was when he discovered that he could make people have his babies without being pregnant himself. It was a powerful magic that the dragon had given him, but it was dangerous, and he might get lost in his own mind if he wasn't careful. That's why this book is also coded to be pro-choice. You're welcome, ladies. One night, the dragon whispered to Jed again, and this time it told him about the true nature of Hermione. She wasn't really human. She was a machine that was made by wizards in the far future, and they sent her back in time so that she could have sex with Jed. And it was a powerful spell, and they might have to be very careful. But the dragon said that the machine that made Hermione had been destroyed by the wizards, so that they wouldn't have to be worried.
Callback.
Oh, yes, this is a two-sided book. One side, The Wizard of Earthsea. The other side, The 50 Shades of Hermione. This is my fanfiction of both of the above stories. I took the concepts that I loved from A Wizard of Earthsea and expanded on them by creating a character with magical abilities, but also a lot of sexual desire. It was an idea that came to me after I read a short story about a woman who could fly, and I wanted to expand on that idea by adding magic. One night, Hermione came to him, but this time she had no clothes on, and she was pregnant again. She told Jed that he was the father, that she was pregnant with this child. She told him that he had to take care of the child, or he would lose control of his magic. That is the true meaning of this fanfic. I will take everything you love from Earthsea and combine it with Hermione. You can't have one without the other. That is an unavoidable truth that both these stories have a part in the making of my world. They are a part of my universe, and you cannot separate them from one another. Estate of Ursula K. Le Guin. Say, when do the events of Earthsea take place in the Harry Potter world? Dimitkowski. The final book. The final half of the final book. Like after the prom. Estate of Ursula K. Le Guin. Holy fuck. Yudkowski. We're getting paid millions of dollars. You better deliver us that wizard book. D.M. Yudkowski. Yes. Estate of Ursula K. Le Guin. And not you. Your little fan fiction book. I mean the real deal. With dragons, wizards, and magic. D.M. Yudkowski. Yeah! You got it! You guys are in business now. Estate of Ursula K. Le Guin. One more thing. What the fuck are we doing with this whole Harry Potter vs. Wizard of Earthsea debate? D. Mikowski. They're a two-sided book. That means the same characters and settings appear in both. Estate of Ursula K. Le Guin. Look here, Dean. This book is gonna be big business for you, but we need you to stay away from Harry Potter for a while. Okay. D.M. Yudkowski. Why? What's he done? Estate of Ursula K. Le Guin. You'll understand soon enough. Now, go back to making that Harry Potter / a Wizard of Earthsea crossover and let us worry about the details, okay? D.M. Yudkowski. Yes, ma'am. The estate of Ursula K. Le Guin would like to extend a warm thanks to Yudkowski's fanfiction for bringing our universe to life. This has been an exciting adventure for all involved, and we look forward to sharing the many wonders of our universe with all who love. Fantasy. We hope that you, like us, will come to understand the truth of our world, that all things are connected, that all things are part of one greater whole. We hope that you too will see the light that shines from the stars above us and know that it is our destiny to be among them. We thank you for being a part of this journey and for believing in us. We are the stars that shine down upon you, and we love you. Author's note. This story was written by a fan of the Harry Potter series and a Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin. No copyright infringement is intended, and no money is being made from this work. This story was originally published on the HPVS All Community Archive website in February of 2007. I do not own either series, and this is a non-profit fan fiction story written solely for entertainment. Fan fiction can be found at the link below. / Harry Potter for motion. / to Wizard of Earth's fanfic 12. Figment of Yukowski's brain. Just say the word, and we can bring Butler into this. Get this title, The Parable of the Blower. This book is licensed to the original owners of this work only. If you are not an original owner, please enjoy this story on your own personal website / blog and do not reproduce or reprint without permission from the authors. Thank you. Yudkowsky. How many Harry Potter books has the guy written now? This is a non-profit fan fiction story. Fanfic by Yudkowsky. This fanfic is dedicated to the memory of Ursula K.
That's enough. That's enough. Rest in pieces. Power. Pieces. Power. Pieces. Pieces. Pieces of power. Peace and powers. Pieces. Pieces powers.